Birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, whatever the occasion, it just got a little more personal with meaningful photo gifts from Shutterfly. Add a silly photo to a gold-rimmed mug for your bestie. Put your sweet puppy on a cozy fleece blanket for your teen. Gift your husband a desktop plaque featuring all the kids. Enjoy 40% off orders over $29 with code POD40 at Shutterfly.com and make something that means something.
When you sent the list through of available movies on Netflix and this movie was on it, I think my first response was, how has no one picked this? I was honestly quite shocked because to me, this is not just the best Spider-Man movie, but also possibly the best animated movie ever made. One of the last episodes I was on Flixwatcher was on another animated movie, so I've got previous with animation, and I feel like I'm just laying my cards on the table that, to me, this is kind of the pinnacle.
Hey everyone, joining Flixwatcher today, we have Em.
Hi.
We have Chris.
Hello.
And we have Kobe.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Thank you as always to Mighty People for their mighty, mighty tunes, and thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for editing my nonsense as I pronounce Mighty People. Please do remember to head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating and a massively glowing review, guys. It's really important and it helps people find this podcast. And if you want to find us on Twitter or Instagram, we are there on those social media platforms. Twitter is at FlixWatcherPod or Instagram at FlixWatcher.
Hello, film fans. Our guests today are Em and Chris. Over to you, please, Chris, to say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hi, I'm Chris. I host a podcast called Easy Riders Raging Podcast, which each series we look at a different decade's films and TV. Currently, we're doing the 80s, just everything, music videos, film, TV, some ads.
80s music videos?
Why not?
Oh, just music?
Well, we've done both, because my opinion is that everything is film, really. So,
have you done Sledgehammer yet?
Yes, we have. Yes,
I was going to go for Thriller.
We haven't yet, but I think like a good episode of a TV show, and that's cinema to me. A good ad, it's all in the eye of the beholder.
Do you rate the shows, or do you just talk about them and with the nostalgic kind of gleam in your eye?
It's a discussion.
Your previous films, your previous decades, I mean, were you around in the 50s? I don't know how old you are. I don't know that old, but were you around is this the first decade you've been around? You were around when you were talking about the films, so you can remember them on first release?
That's correct, yeah. We're rapidly catching up with current day, one decade at a time.
So how does that change, if at all, how you talk about the films? Because you ostensibly remember Sledgehammer video coming out, or Back to the Future, which is M's 250th episode, which we'll talk about in a second, when that came out. I don't know how old you are. Were you alive when Back to the Future came out?
Yeah, I was 2. There's always I think there's lots to discuss, everything, even in a bad film or a bad TV series. There's always stuff to chew on. There's always some jokes about the government to be had, even even if it's not relevant at all. But yeah, there's more nostalgia to lean into, like you said, as we get into the 80s. There's lots, because there's so much there. You go, oh yeah, I remember watching that when I was a kid. I remember seeing that as a teen. Yeah, great stuff.
And Em, who are you? We talked about, I mentioned, I teed you up basically to talk about Back to the Future, because that's an important thing for you, isn't it?
I mean, yeah. So I host Verbal Diorama, which is the podcast all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't. And thank you for teeing me up, Kobe, because Back to the Future is my recent 250th episode. So that's quite a cool milestone to hit. Absolutely. That. Just after celebrating 5 years. So when you've been doing a podcast for that amount of time, you would think that I would start to get a bit bored. However, film history is always going to be fascinating to me. I love researching stuff, which is kind of fortuitous considering that's literally all I do with my time. But a movie like Back to the Future is a fascinating concept for my podcast, in that a lot of people know a lot about Back to the Future because everyone talks about it, everyone loves it, it's nostalgic. But the stories of Back to the Future are generally out there. People know the Eric Stoltz situation as an example. Everyone knows that. So for me, it's how do I find the story of Back to the Future that not many people do know? And that's been an interesting task for me, to try and find the story that maybe not so many people do know.
What one main story do you find that people, what thread that if you listen to your podcast, do you pull up?
So I pull at a very specific thread. So the reason that Back to the Future got made essentially was technically down to Romancing the Stone. The fact that Zemeckis got Romancing the Stone after a series of flops. And Romancing the Stone was a huge surprise hit. I've actually done an episode on that as well because I love Romancing the Stone. But it was a very fortuitous series of events because the script was originally put together at Columbia. Then Columbia got bought out by Coca-Cola. The guy who was at Columbia then left, ended up at Universal. But Universal didn't have the rights to make Back to the Future. And there was basically, Columbia wanted to make another movie that was based on a movie called Double Indemnity, which Universal owned the rights to. And so it was basically a bit of a trade. So it was like, oh, we'll give you Double Indemnity if you give us Back to the Future. And the fascinating thing about what I do is finding those links, finding those like little spider webs of information as to how something comes together. And making of movies is miraculous. It's a series of dominoes. If one domino isn't placed in quite the right spot, then it won't happen. And that's why I love what I do, because it was just that series of events that led to Back to the Future actually being made.
A recent Back to the Future trivia, well, not recent, something I found in the last couple of years, was everyone talks about Eric Stoltz getting fired, but who else got fired as a result of Eric Stoltz getting fired?
Eric Stoltz's mum?
Well, Crispin Glover almost got fired.
Yeah, but he didn't get fired.
But they decided to keep him, but then he was asked to not return.
The person got fired was Melora Hardin, who most people know as Jan Levinson in The Office.
Yeah.
Because she was going to play Jennifer. Yeah. But because she is way taller than Michael J. Fox, she also got the as a result of that. So.
Yeah, I didn't put that in the episode, but I did read that. It's basically like a choice of finding the bits of information that I feel is kind of pertinent to the episode. And bits like that I did know about Melora Harding, but I didn't actually include that. But yeah, it's quite interesting really, because Crispin Glover obviously didn't get fired, but the reason why he never returned is kind of an interesting story in itself. And then obviously it led to a lawsuit, which led to changes, so...
Let's head to Spider-Man to Spider-Verse, which is your choice. So tell us, first of all, why you chose it, why you chose Spider-Man to Spider-Verse, and then I'll give you 60 seconds to give us the synopsis.
I mean, honestly, when you sent the list through of available movies on Netflix, and this movie was on it, I think my first response was, how has no one picked this? I was honestly quite shocked, because to me, this is not just the best Spider-Man movie. Yeah, I'm putting it out there. It is the best Spider-Man movie, but also possibly the best animated movie ever made. And I'm putting that out there as well. The last episode, one of the last episodes I was on Flixwatcher was on another animated movie. So I've got previous with animation. And I feel like I'm just laying my cards on the table that, to me, this is kind of the pinnacle.
Should I get the stopwatch out? And your 60 seconds to give us the synopsis starts now.
Okay, so Miles Morales is a regular everyday teenager, and he obviously, as the story goes, because let's do this one last time, he gets bitten by a radioactive spider while he's doing graffiti down in the subway. He then happens upon the actual Spider-Man, Peter Parker, who he basically witnesses his death by the hands of the Kingpin. And the Kingpin has basically got this huge collider, and all of the universes are all kind of coming together. And because Peter Parker is kind of pushed into this collider, all of the spider people, get pushed into Miles' universe. And it's basically the story of all of these spider people doing spider people stuff.
Just under the buzzer there.
Ooh.
Helen, I'm going to go to you first, because I think this might be the first time you watched this. Am I correct?
This is correct. Even though any time since 2018, Kobe has recommended a film to me, it's always been have you watched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse? And I had not, but now I have. I knew the moment would arrive that this would happen. We don't know what number episodes this will be, but it'll be a momentous occasion that I can finally hit that button on Letterboxd, and it's going to go from watch list into my diary.
We're on the edge. What does Helen think?
Yeah, what are your thoughts? You're not a super big superhero fan. You're not a super big animation fan. But where are you in general on Spider-Man to the Spider-Verse after all the hype, years of hype?
So I was watching this, and then I was like, this is essentially, no spoilers, but sort of what Spider-Man No Way Home was sort of doing, which I have seen, but they did it really naffly. And like, I was like, why would you continue making Spider-Man films if you have this? What would be the point? So yeah, I think it's fair to say it's the best animated film that I've seen in a long, long time. And compared to the Tom Holland Spider-Man films, like, they're pretty rubbish compared to this. So I think I'd not seen this because I had Spidey fatigue, in that I loved the Tobey Maguire Spideys. I didn't really bother with the rebooting with Andrew Garfield, and I'd seen the Tom Holland ones, but they were okay. I find them a bit of a chore. But like, this completely reboots it and re-energizes it, and it kind of makes perfect sense that Spider-Man should be animated because it's come from comics, and it manages to solve that issue that every other Spider-Man film has had, is that Spider-Man ends up looking far too old to be played a teenager. So this kind of just feels like such a natural fit. You can kind of tell it's kind of come from the minds behind the Lego movies in that kind of sort of fast-paced style. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm just like, any other Spider-Man film now is just, it's just not very good in comparison, is it really?
Chris, any other Spider-Man film in comparison?
Is there another one that can compare? Well, the sequel, Helen, which is possibly even better. I'm just saying.
Another 10 years will pass and I may see it.
It's available on Now TV as we speak.
Yeah, I was convinced when this film came out that they wouldn't pull it off, because I was familiar with the Ultimate Spider-Man run by Brian Michael Bendis, where they introduced Miles, and I thought, well, that was great, but I don't know if the general public are going to take to passing on the torch. And it's all the multiverse, and I was familiar with that as well because I used to watch Sliders and read Exiles. But I was like, the public won't take to that. It's just, and there's loads of weird characters. I don't think the public are going to like that. And I was wrong. You know, people love this film, and they pulled it all off. It's a masterpiece. It's beautiful. It's hilarious. Full of heart. Nothing is half-assed here. It's all done to perfection.
Nothing is half-assed. I like that.
I mean, what do you think, Kobe?
I hate it. I think it's dog shit. Anyway, back to the I've said in a previous episode what I think about this film in passing, and one of the reasons I was asking Chris about the films he referred to in the 80s is because that's when you when you grow up, that's when you formulate your favourite films through nostalgia, through happenstance, through like forming your brain just forming in different ways. And the reason I'm saying this is because this is the most recent film that has made my top 10. I don't know, I haven't formulated the top 10, but this is in there with a bullet, and it's probably in the top 5, and that's insane for someone in their 40s to watch a film and think that this is
Kobe. You can't be in your 40s.
I'll pay you later. So. And I was like yourself, Chris, and Helen, and I don't know what your thoughts were before going into it, Em, but I was like, it's a fucking another Spider-Man, and it's I like animation, but I can't see how this is good, and the reviews were like, it's really good, and I was like, oh, fuck it, I've got nothing else to do, I'll go down there. And then within like a few minutes, I was like, what the hell is this? What actually the hell is this? And I think I watched it twice more in the cinema at that time, because I just couldn't compute in my tiny little mind what was happening here, how fun it was, how relevant it was, and how sweet it was. And I just think it's dynamite. I just think it's absolutely dynamite. And as Helen said, I've told everyone, if you haven't seen it, then what the hell are you playing at? Because it's just a spectacular film. And I look forward to the third installment with literally anxiety levels rising every single day that I haven't seen it in my life. So I can't wait. So there, I like it. You might be able to guess some of the scores that happen here. But what were your thoughts before you watched it? Did you watch it in the cinema? Were you reluctant viewer like myself, Helen, and Chris were?
Absolutely not. And this is despite the fact Sony Animation, the studio that made this movie, they've had a bit of a checkered history, because their most recent movies kind of before this were kind of the
Emoji Movie,
Hotel Transylvania movies, which are fine. Peter Rabbit, which I've not seen, but it's probably fine. The Emoji Movie, which is literal shit.
Not
because we can say that because Patrick Stewart plays shit in that movie, and things like Open Season and stuff like that. So it's like, it's come from a studio that's not really seen for its quality. This is not a Pixar level studio. This is a studio that is questionable. And despite that, I saw the names Lord and Miller. Lord and Miller also did Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, also for Sony, which that first movie is terrific. Second movie, not so great, but first movie, really, really fun. So I kind of saw the Lord and Miller thing, and I was like, do you know what? I have faith.
Also did 21 Jump Street, those guys before this.
Yeah. So I put a remarkable amount of faith in this movie, and I went to see it at the cinema, and I'm so glad that I saw it at the cinema. This movie also came out at a time when my personal life wasn't particularly great, so I went to see it, and it really, really cheered me up, because I kind of felt like I needed a bit of cheering up. But I don't think I can really put into words, which is kind of vital on a podcast, to put things into words as to how much you like something, as to how much this movie means to me. But if I say that it's in my Letterboxd top 4, then I think that tells you how much I love this movie and how much this movie means to me. Not just, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest Spider-Man fan in the world. The live action movies are fine. You know, the Spider-Man 2, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 is terrific. Like, I think that's genuinely great. The others, I can give or take an Andrew Garfield Spider-Man or a Tom Holland Spider-Man. Like, they're fine. They're enjoyable, but animation can do many things that live action can't. And it really irks me when the trend of remaking animation into live action, it will not give you anything that animation can't do. This movie proves that. Because like Helen said, there are plenty of Spider-Man movies out there, but none of them can match this. In any way, things like the world building, the characters, the fact that Sony Animation seriously upped their game, not just with this, but then going into the Mitchells versus the Machines, and then obviously further Spider-Verse movies, which may hopefully eventually be also on Netflix one day. Everything about this movie, to me, is outstanding. Just general movie making, but also in the field of animation.
I think you've got to acknowledge as well the fact that a lot of animation studios now are thinking, oh shit, they gone and did that. How do we do that now as well? To the extent there are Pixar, I'm not sure Pixar obviously taken, I haven't seen any manifestation of how they changed things, but the Pixar format was goofy looking characters against a realistic backdrop was the kind of standard format, and people were looking for that. And then these guys came along and said, no, we'll just do what we want to do. And what they want to do is like make everything spectacular. And when this is more exaggerated when you get to the second one of this, where they really do dig into how the different worlds can manifest, and you know, they can really lean into that animation style, which the character side you could possibly pull it off in the real world, on non-animated films, but I can't see how they could how well they could make the backgrounds and the interactions with everything else in a non-animated film. So I fully agree with you. Exactly.
I mean, this is basically a comic book come to life. When you look at the style, you know, the fact that you've got Kirby dots, the fact that Miles is animated on 2s, And then as his experience grows, is animated on ones. So basically it's like animated on ones is 24 frames per second. And then animating on twos is basically you're animating him every other frame. So the fact that he starts off animated on twos and then he gradually moves on to ones to match Peter B. Parker as his experience grows. It's just the level of detail and the level of thought that's gone into this is, I mean, it's genuinely outstanding. This is one of the greatest accomplishments in modern animation, and it's on Netflix, and it's there for everyone to watch. I cannot say enough great things about this movie.
I don't want to go too much into the animation frame side of things, but when one of the characters on my shelf here is Spider-Punk, who you meet in across the Spider-Verse, and he's animated in the different, so his like guitar's animated on the threes, his jacket's animated on the threes, but on different threes, and he's animated in twos in general, and some parts of him is animated. So like the fact they've got 4 different frame rates on one character, and it's kind of done as a zine kind of format. It's just like when I'm watching it, my head wants to explode because it just doesn't compute. But also at the same time, Helen, you need to watch this film because if you like this one, it'll be interesting to see what you think of the second one.
Oh, Helen, you'll love it.
Chris, you said this is your favourite Spider-Man. Is your favourite superhero film or just Spider film?
It's up there. It's definitely it probably is, to be honest. I mean, I've enjoyed all the Holland stuff, and I used to love the 90s cartoon. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to think of a better Spider-Man film than this, or perhaps the sequel. They are done to perfection.
Well, let's talk about. We have 2 versions of Peter Parker here, but we also have the introduction of Miles Morales. We also have the introduction of Gwen Stacy on the big screen. Doc Ock as a female antagonist is something that's interesting, and made a point about that in the film, and just it's so funny. I don't know. There's lots of things. I'm sorry. Also, there's lots of spiders: Spider Pig, Spider Ham, Spider Noir, Penny Parker. What's going on in this film? It's just...
There's lots of guest voices, but definitely like 100% the standout for me is Nick Cage. Like as soon as you hear him, you're like that is unmistakable. And that's how you voice act. Because a few of them I didn't quite get. I only kind of got them when I looked up. But a couple of them are just that kind of like level of voice acting is really impressive.
Do you want to get voice actors though, or do you want to be consumed by the film?
I think it's kind of good when you're like, oh yeah, this is that person. But then you're like taken into it. I sometimes find that I'm kind of sat there trying to work out who someone is because I kind of know them, but I can't quite place it, and then I'm not really absorbed into the film. Whereas if it's like, as soon as they talk, you're like, oh, that's that voice, that's the actor. And then you kind of in then, and you're just enjoying the voice and the other bits and the stuff on the screen.
I think it works for a character like Spider-Man Noir, though, to be Nick Cage because he's a recognisable voice, but the voice fits the character so well. It's like that is really the only voice that you could have for that character, if you see my meaning. You know, I do think the cast is superb just generally, but it would be very easy for Nick Cage to be a stunt casting kind of thing. Oh, look, we've got Nicolas Cage in our movie. But it's so much more than that because it just suits the aloofness of the character.
Yeah, you can't imagine it working with anyone else because it's such a big swing, but it works.
I think that, the Nick Cage as that voice is like, that stands out as him, but also makes perfect sense with the voice. But the other casts, it's super stacked, but you also don't really notice it. Like Hailee Steinfeld, Brian Tyree Henry, he didn't want to do that. He was like, I can't be a dad. And it's like, just be fucking his dad in this film. Mahershala Ali, they're all people you'd recognise definitely if you saw a picture of them, but voice-wise, either how they're doing it or removed from their visuals, from their faces, is a different kind of setup, and it all adds definitely to the character. I think maybe like Jake Johnston's my favourite because Jake Johnston's one of those people who I'm like, oh, that's Jake Johnston. I don't really know what he does, but when I remind myself, well, there you go. But then I'm like, oh right, he's Peter B. Parker. And it kind of makes sense when that's put together. Chris Pine's in here as a stunt casting bit as the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Spider-Man. It's the cast is stacked, but yeah, Nick Cage does stand out in that.
The key with the cast, it's a massive cast and lots of varied characters. Miles is always the star. He doesn't get lost in the crowd. It's his film start to finish, and you just fully invest in him. And I was thinking about how they kind of, obviously we've only had sort of white guys playing Spider-Man. Obviously, bringing Miles, who's a black Latino character, and he's just great and it just naturally works. But by bringing Miles to the screen, it kind of democratized Spider-Man and just said, like, heroes don't have to be played by a guy called Chris. They can be fantastic, played by female characters, people of colour, disabled people could be great superheroes, trans people. We don't just need...
Pigs can be.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anything,
let's not forget
anything
the pigs.
goes.
But that's kind of the point of this movie, isn't it? It's the idea that anyone can wear the mask. That is the whole point of this movie. And this movie doesn't just say that, it delivers that anyone can wear the mask. Anyone can be that hero. I love the fact that this movie is so stacked, you know, just as a cast-wise, but also the diversity and the representation that, you know, that Chris has just said. Anyone can wear the mask. Anyone can be that hero. And it's not, like you say, not just a white guy called Chris, even though there is a white guy called Chris playing the hero. He does a great job.
And talking about the film.
Yeah. You always got to have the white guy called
Represent.
Chris. Yeah.
And this is my favourite Stan Lee cameo, I think, as well. Apart from maybe the one in the first Ant-Man.
The one where he's reading the Mallrats script is pretty great, I've got to say.
Well, in Mallrats, but that's not in... that's in Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel.
Yeah. That's pretty funny. that's levels deep and very clever. But this is definitely emotional. I can't remember. Had he just passed when this, or was it?
I think he just had passed, if I remember correctly.
But it hits hard and it's super poignant, and I love it. That's a bit of a sideline. Anything else you guys want to say before we head to the scores? Obviously, we keep on talking about the...
I mean, I just need to shout out the soundtrack. The soundtrack is excellent. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that in order to... you got the
Miles
soundtrack
and the score, which are both, like, prominent.
Yeah, both. Awesome. But I love the fact that Miles is so relatable in that, I don't know about you guys, but you know, like when you can't remember the lyrics to something and so you kind of just make them up, and he's singing that Post Malone song, Sunflower, and every so often he's just like, he doesn't know the words, so he just kind of goes, or makes them up. And that's just so relatable. That's like, this is a character that I can relate to, even though I'm not a black Latino kid from New York, but I can still relate to him because I do that as well. Not necessarily with Sunflower, but yeah, the soundtrack and the score, the Daniel Pemberton score, and the Prowler, the bit in the score when you get the Prowler is just, I love it. I love it so much. Everything in this movie is just like chef's kiss for me.
Scores?
Let's head to the scores.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
I'm Sam Clements, host of the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival, another podcast in the Stripped Media family, a podcast that celebrates movies under 90 minutes long. Each episode, I'm joined by a special guest who selects a movie to join our prestigious lineup. Past guests have included fellow Stripped Media family members Martin and Sam from Song by Song, and Kobe from Flixwatcher, and Dave from The Wire Stripped. Search for us now on the app you're currently listening to this podcast, or join us at 90minfilmfest.com.
Welcome to the Flixwatcher scores. They're always out of 5. You can have decimal places if you wish, and we'll start with you, please, and with your recommendability.
Oh, it's got to be 5. It's got to be 5. There's no way on earth that I could not recommend this movie. It is outstanding. I kind of feel like even if you're maybe not the biggest fan of animation or the biggest fan of Spider-Man, there's so much to offer here. It's an outstanding movie. It's got to be 5.
Chris?
Oh, it's such an easy 5. Yeah, when it came out, because I think most of my friends were watching the MCU films, but I think a lot of them we're going to skip this because it was an animation. Maybe they didn't have to see it. But I was like, but you do. You should. You'll love it. And recommended it far and wide. So yeah, 5.
Helen?
I have something quickly I wanted to ask. So is this just Netflix being weird? But what's with the German box text?
Yeah, that happened to me as well.
I wanted to mention that. Yeah.
I was like, is this something that I'm missing, or is it just like Netflix playing the wrong version?
That's not how it's happened.
I think that's revealed in the second one.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's not like
That's
just
fine.
German comic book. Yeah, that was weird. That kind of took me out a little bit. It made me want to put my Blu-ray on instead, but I stayed faithful to Netflix for this. But yeah, that was weird.
Just watch it go, am I having a stroke? Or is that German? No.
I did stop it a few times and did the kind of like, because you can change the language.
Toggle
you can
the
change
language,
the subtitles. Yeah, so you've had a slightly inferior experience, Helen. This is the first time you watched it.
Helen,
Unless
it's
your
just
German's
Netflix glitching.
Yeah.
I did really, really enjoy this. I still think that there are people who don't like superhero films that will not be on board with this. And I know people who would not watch this because it's an animation. To kind of quote, you got a problem with cartoons? Yeah, and I think there is a certain element of Spidey fatigue, which is where some people have gone. But I'm still going to give it a 4.8.
Yeah, it's the easiest 5 since Back to the Future ever. So yeah. I think one of the reasons I've screamed about this from the top of the Empire State Building is because I went in there with a lot of that kind of baggage, like, there's another Spidey thing. Not animation, but it was like, I can't see how it's because at this time Marvel was in an unbelievable winning streak, right? So I was like, well, I can't see how this is going to be better than what we're seeing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I'm here to tell people I was wrong, guys. Listen, this is why you should watch it, because I was wrong, and many people have gone and made the same mistake. I don't want you to make the same mistake that you did, Helen. You've made a 6-year mistake. One of my friends, when I was at university, he hadn't watched Pulp Fiction for the whole time we lived together for like 5 years. And then one day he watched it, he was like, I'm sorry, I watched Pulp Fiction and you were right. I was like, well, you've just wasted 7 years of your life. But the reason I recommend it so highly is because I think it's too easy to dismiss, as well as the fact it is awesome. So yeah. Repeat viewing score, M.
Easy 5. And the reason I say that is because I've rewatched this film so many times. I love it. It's not quite at the Mummy level, because I've seen the Mummy so many more times, but the Mummy is older. So, but yeah, as
we record this, Mummy is displayed prominently on M's shelving unit behind us.
It's up there. We can see.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's
as well as Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a VHS?
It is. This is the VHS that I purchased from the video rental store.
It's one when they were tired of it.
So I own the Mummy on many formats, but I don't have a VHS player, by the way. I just have this one VHS. But yeah, I love the Mummy. But yeah.
Just turn the reels really fast.
Yeah. Just look at the film. Yeah, I've rewatched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse so many times. I love it. I can quite happily, if I'm bored on a Saturday afternoon, go, I'm just going to stick Spider-Verse on. It's great. I love it. Yeah, easy 5 for me.
Chris?
Yeah, it was such an easy rewatch. And I think I last saw it before Across the Spider-Verse came out. I think I probably did the reheat just for the thing. And it's just so easy to watch. I was rewatching it on the train on my phone, and it was just, I was laughing out loud. I was almost crying at the moment where Peter B. Parker was like, I might screw up again. I mean, Peter B. Parker is painfully relatable. It's painfully relatable for other people that aren't me. Yeah, I'll give it a 4.8.
Helen?
Yeah, I don't know how much I'm going to rewatch this, but I enjoyed this enough to want to check out the new one and hunt that down. So I think I would definitely watch the second one before I go for this one. So I'm going to go for a 3. 5
next. No, I mean, I watch this so often.
How many times have you seen it?
It's definitely getting towards... I'm going to caveat this by the fact that I've got a son who's about to turn 4 and he loves this film as well. So quite often it's a rotation of this, Zootropolis, Frozen's in there, Moana's in there, and he'll go on a stint for just a film for a month. And sometimes I'll just stick on this for a month and I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to watch this again with you from start to finish.
Kobe, are you telling me he hasn't seen Pulp Fiction yet?
He's not seen Pulp Fiction yet, no.
I can't believe it.
He hasn't called me a bad motherfucker yet, so I know he hasn't seen Pulp Fiction.
To your face.
Yeah, to my face. As soon as I shut the door, it's like, bad motherfucker! What? So, yeah, the amount of times I've seen it to date and the amount of times I'm going to see in the future, 5 is just 5 ever given. Small screen score.
So, I mean, I don't think it can be a 5 because I feel like this is such a visually splendid movie that you do lose something going from the cinema to watching it home, because there's no way that you can't, because it's such a beautiful movie. It's so intricately detailed. You do lose something. So while I'd be like, oh no, I just want to do 5, 5, 5, 5, thinking about it, I don't think I can. But I do want to give it a 4.75. It does lose a little, translated to a slightly smaller screen, but not enough to kind of, any less than that, because I think it still works on a smaller screen. I've not actually watched it on like a phone or anything. But again, like modern phones, like the resolution's quite good. So, but it is a very visual movie, and, it doesn't rely too much on its visuals, but they are fairly important. So yeah, I'd say a 4.75.
Chris?
Well, I did indeed rewatch this on my phone over the last couple of days on the Hammersmith and City line, and it still looked lush, it looks beautiful. Like, I love all those, like, the lovely wide shots they do, or just the way they use colour and texture and some of the framing and stuff. So I think it looks great. I'm going to give it a 4.9, and I'm just going to keep that 1 point back because I think that the next one looks even more stunning because it, like Kobe said, it sort of embraces more sort of visual styles.
Yeah.
So I'm just holding back just that to give the sequel that edge.
Helen?
Yeah, so I wouldn't have gone to see this at the cinema, obviously, because I'm watching it for the first time round. And I had no inkling to go and see the second one in that. And did we see the Lego movie in IMAX together for the cinema? Was it in IMAX?
Yeah.
Which I found...
Was it Lego movie or Lego Batman?
Lego Batman, that was the one, wasn't it? In
Yeah.
IMAX, which I found a bit much, let's be honest. So I wouldn't want to see this in IMAX, and I feel as though it would be too much going on. And I watched it on TV and I enjoyed it. Like, I didn't have anything to compare it to, and I enjoyed it, so I'm going to give it a 5.
I'm going 4.5 because this is goddamn one of the best cinematic experiences I've had. And like I said, I saw it 3 times in its first run. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I've seen at least 3 times. Yeah, I've seen, 3 times in the cinema, 2 days in a row on the preview. And then the first day it came out because I was just like, I need to watch that straight away again. And I don't think I'd watched it at home until my son, I was like, okay, well, it's on Sky at the moment. Let's watch it and see if he likes it. So I don't think I'd watch it at home because I was typically with films like that, with a lot of the Marvel films, I watched it in cinema a couple of times and I don't watch it again because I don't think it's going to be as good. And it works. It really works. I was like, great. So I can watch this every day for the rest of my life if I want to.
They should give you like loyalty stamps.
Yeah, exactly.
You get like to go to the premiere if you collect like 1 million loyalty stamps.
But the soundtrack and the collective experience is why I'm holding it back, because it's, I'd love to see this in IMAX. I think I did. I think I saw the second one in IMAX in Leicester Square for the first time, and yeah, it's amazing. Engagement score,
5. I could not put this on and then stop it. I don't think I physically could. Like, to me, it's like you start it, you go through, you finish it. It would be like my house would have to be burning down around me to stop this movie. I'd have to have like the police knocking on my door. Like, I don't know. It'd have to be something really serious for me to stop this movie because I love it. I don't know if you've got that in, what I've been saying about how much I love this movie, but if you haven't, yeah. I love this movie. So,
Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to give it 5 as well. Like, I was just thinking, it's like some of the little moments just really stuck with me. Just thinking about now, just like the bit where Miles's mum comforts his dad, or like the look when Gwen notices the bond between Peter and Miles. So just these little moments, the care and beauty to it. Or the moment where he's sliding, the snowman head is sliding past the bus window, and Miles just gives the other young guy, just gives him a nod. It's just the little things. And also does the big spectacular, like, falling upwards. It's beautiful. That's it's spectacular.
I have that as a piece of art in my living room, by the way, the falling upwards. That is a genuine piece of art. Because
hold on. This one here.
Hold on. Yes.
This is a great moment for
exactly
podcasts.
the same thing, Kobe. Exactly the same thing.
So
because every frame in this movie is a genuine piece of art.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's outstanding.
So we're talking about the leap of faith scene where he finally becomes like Miles Morales becomes Spider-Man and he can be part of the crew. And I took that image to get framed, and I had to explain the amount of times I had to explain his head needs to be pointing upwards, otherwise you framed it wrong. And I even put like post-it notes like up. It has to be pointing up.
Yeah.
But that's every time I watch that scene. So it's the big things and it's so many little things. That's a big thing. One of my favourite gags in the whole thing is Peter Porker as he goes back into his own world from the collider, and it says, "That's all, folks." And there's I can't remember who it is. I think it's Peter B. Pug says, "Can he say that legally?"
Yeah, it's such a funny line.
So many little quips that I cannot. Yeah, little quips, big quips, relationship bites, beats. Yeah, it's a 5. Sorry, I've jumped over Helen. Sorry, go on, Helen.
Oh, I wish I loved it as much as you all did. I did really enjoy it, and I'm super glad to see it. But it was fun, but it's not quite got like the whole of my heart, unfortunately. But that said, I still had a really good time.
You'll get there, Helen. You'll get there.
Maybe, or maybe
It's a leap of
I
faith, Helen.
Maybe I never will. Leap of faith. But yeah, I was still entertained. Like, I think it just about holds its near 2-hour runtime. So yeah, 4.5 for engagement.
The question for me, Helen, is will you watch the third one in the cinema?
Go on, Helen.
I don't know. Maybe. Maybe for you. For you, I will.
One of the things I don't know if it works best here or the repeat viewing score, is the fact that when you watch the second one and then you go back to the first one, the trail that they've laid in this first film, even though it's a complete film in itself, is like absolutely phenomenal. There's so many things which pay off in the second film, which I'm sure will pay off even more in the final film, which just kind of blow my mind. And the number 42, for example, and what jinx and what doesn't, what glitches and what doesn't glitch, and also Gwen's world. You see just a flash of it in this, and then you see more of it, and you're like, okay, these guys know what they're doing. And then compared to the knobheads that did the sequel trilogy in Star Wars, who they just kind of went, well, let's just make an episode. Well, let's make another film. You can have it. Don't worry about the guys preceding you or what's going to happen after. You just make your own fucking film. And then last guy, Abrams again, was like, I don't care what the previous guys did. I'll just make my own fucking film. And in this day and age, when a films like this can show such care and attention to track from one film to the next and be its own complete episode, I think what the guys did in Star Wars, the prequel trilogy, was just beyond reproach. So this levels of engagement is amped up because of seeing the second one and going back to the first one to see what the tracks have laid to the second one. And I'm just like in varying different waves of awe because it's just spectacular in levels I've never seen before. So that's the 3 for engagement score for me there. 5.
So did they know they were going to get a second one then, do you think? Were they always written like that? Or did they just go back to the first one and make it all make sense?
I think this is a huge gamble because of the change, the way it's made. I know some animators, BAFTA award-winning animators, who when they first saw the first 5 minutes were like, I don't understand what you're doing. Is the whole film like this? This can't be the case. So they were just breaking all these different laws. So it was a huge gamble. But I think they were just like, there's things that if it doesn't pay off, it doesn't matter. The number 42, if it doesn't get to the next film, it's just a thing that happens every now and again.
Well, yeah, the post-credit sequence especially, like, it's just a funny gag, and yet it is the setup.
So that gives an overall score of 4.76563. I'm just going to head to the current table And as we record, this is currently this is number 4 in the list of the top films as we record. But by the time you listen to this episode, there may be some more films who have beaten it or not. We don't know. Woo. So currently we have Crazy Stupid Love at number 1, When Harry Met Sally and The Fugitive at joint number 2, and then this is number 4 in the list of films.
How the hell is The
Straight into
Fugitive
the
so
top
high? The Fugitive.
The rewatchability of that film is high.
I don't care.
So, guys, if you are, as you're listening, please follow us on Twitter. If you don't follow us on Twitter already, go follow us. We are at Flixwatcher Pod. We talk about films, but also we ask you guys to give your thoughts on the film we're about to record. Look out for a tweet saying something similar to this. We're recording a film about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse with Variable Diorama and ERR Podcast. Please give us your thoughts and a 5-star review. And depending when you watch this, there may or may not be a competition to win some pin badges. Do get involved if you can do. Em, do you want to read out the tweet that came with this one?
Yes. So this comes from the podcast Nobody Asked For, which is at Nobody Asked For Pod, who says, "It's not just the best Spider-Man film or best superhero movie. It's one of the best movies ever made. Felt like a breath of fresh air with animation style. An easy 5 spiders out of 5. I would have gone 6, but I respect the format too much."
Thank you very much, guys. Previous guests, and you are the winners. So I guess, the winner of the badge. So do send us an email to either helen@flixwatcher.tv or kobe@flixwatcher.tv with your address, and we'll send you the pin badge to say thank you very much for entering that and being a part of the show.
The Flixwatcher verse.
Exactly. This is another button I was going to just pick because as well as the animation, this kind of opened the floodgates for multiverse in film as well. Not enough time to go into that, but it's ruined film for other respects because other films just gone, yeah, we'll throw multiverse in there. Why not? Who cares? That's a little aside. Chris, can you tell us where we can find you online and say goodbye to listeners?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so you can find my stuff at Verbal Diorama on Twitter. Yeah, I'm still calling it Twitter. Facebook, Instagram, wherever. And yeah, you can find Verbal Diorama. And I do have an episode on this movie as well in your podcast app of choice. And thank you, Kobe and Helen, so much for having me back.
No worries. And Chris?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and X. But mainly you can just check out Easy Riders Raging Podcast on your podcast catcher of choice. And we've got tons of episodes. If it's an old film, we've done it. And we've talked about it at length, where we watch, recast things with current day actors and have a good time talking film.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk about this film, and maybe we'll be back at one point talking about the second one in the series and or the third one in the series.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Catch you later, guys.
So, bye.
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 Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes and Rockwood Audio's editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.